Hello, everybody. This is Matt McQueenie, Mix Minus Podcast. It's May 6th, 2017. This is the first episode of May for me. I think I took off last weekend. It was unavoidable. It was not my fault. I hate missing a week because you lose the thread. And when you lose a thread, it can sometimes be lost for several weeks. You just want to maintain. You want to keep going. You want to keep delivering episode after episode, week on week, guests or solo, whatever the case may be, whatever you need to do to get that done. But last week, we had the walk for my wife, who has multiple sclerosis, and it was Walk MS, and it was a great event. I think with all of the goodwill and magnanimousness, or magnanimity, I can't say the word, right? Magnanimous, but it's the right way to say it, almost with the ITY at the end. Magnanimity. That should be the episode's name. Let's see if we can get a or magnanimous. Magnanimity. Magnanimity. There we go. Some words you just have trouble saying, but because of your generousness, now I can't say anything. Because of how generous you all are, I think she was able to amass about $1,500 to $2,000, and that's a lot of good donations that go towards this very debilitating disease for many. She has, knock on wood, done very well. She has her issues. She has had her flare-ups over the years, but she is in really good stead in comparison to a lot of other people. Still doesn't mean we don't see what she's going through and try to do our best with it, but that is there. And we did that walk, and then we had an after party, and before you know it, there's just no time for a podcast. And the day before, I can't remember quite what we did, but you really only have that 1 hour here or there to get this done, and you just don't want to lose the thread. But right now I'm kind of rip-roaring mad, and I don't know if it's because I'm unshowered and it is now after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I did work out already today, ran 4 miles, lifted, tried to finish the week on a high note with a good workout. And I'm very bad with being unshowered. This is way too much behind the curtain information we're getting here. But when I go too long into the day, it's just, it's gross. And I'm sure a lot of people are like this, but I think I crumble. That's like a form of torture to me, to be unshowered. First world problems, I know, but my wife is able to handle it a little better. Not to say that she's not cleanliness is godliness or whatever, but she can handle it a little better. I just can't handle it. It's my Achilles heel. I just have to shower every day. Most of us do, but I have to shower as early into the day as possible because the longer it just gets bad. I remember that being a worry for me about a dozen years ago when I went on a backpacking trip through Europe with my cousin Lou. Crazy 12 years ago. But I was really worried that on this backpacking trip where we went through many countries, we were going on overnight trains. We went from France to Italy to Austria through Germany, back around to France, that I was really worried that there would be at least a day or two where I would not be able to get a shower. Of course, how crazy is that? That's my worry. But hey, it was like 2 to 3 weeks. We were going to be staying at campgrounds at some of it. We were going to be staying at hostels for most of it. But there were no issues. We were able to handle it. We found a shower each day. And that just set me right, along with the cappuccinos and the coffee. But I vividly remember being at a French hostel, a hostel in France, at the front end and back end of the trip. We stayed at the same place. And that was both our entry point to the trip and our departure point. So we just pretty much did a circle all around the different countries that I discussed. But I remember at the front end of the trip, we got there and man, I was worried about hostels because you're staying in rooms with bunk beds and several other people who are kind of itinerant out there on the open roads of Europe. And you're a little worried, but I'll tell you what, it ended up being fantastic. It was a great experience. The sleeping in bunk beds with other people, you would think it would be a big issue. It wasn't. I'm sure I sleep talked a lot and probably got into a lot of trouble I didn't even know of. But, you know, I was there with my cousin. I was on one bunk. He was on the other. So we always had that, and we got through it great. But it was actually fantastic and communal to be in these main areas where they had computers and people would bring in drinks or food, and it was just a lot of discussions, a lot of kind of great interplay of ideas between different people, different cultures who all came upon this one spot, this hostel. And this was the case in all the different hostels we were at. For the most part, there was always a communal spot, and a lot of people would go there and talk with each other, and you'd learn a lot of stuff. And I remember in one of them, this French hostel, I can't remember the name now, but we did stay there front and back end of the trip. Really cool place. It actually ended up, my cousin was supposed to fly out on the day I flew out, and his mom worked with my aunt. She worked with the airlines. And so he was able to pretty much get trips for free or highly discounted, but it meant that you could be on standby type of deal. And so I remember getting back to the States, back to the US. I remember my dad picked me up. It was very early it was right when David Wright had been called up with the Mets, because I remember that I would be following the Mets as much as I could from these internet cafes. I remember it was the year they got Victor Zambrano, and I think what was that guy? What was that guy's name they got? Wasn't it in that same Chris Benson? Yeah, and he had the Anna Benson, the wife, the very loud but very beautiful wife, very loud-mouthed and outspoken. But I remember on that trip just following the Mets that way. It would just be little internet hits here or there, little internet cafes, a half hour here, an hour there. But when I got home, it was when I think the Mets were in Milwaukee, and I remember just being in the car, happy to be back in the States, and we were listening on WFAN, and I think I remember David Wright just having a great day, and I was like, the new guy. This is fantastic to have this guy on the team, and who would think all these years later that he's pretty much sidelined with this back issue. But I remember getting home. I remember, a few days into the trip, or a few days into being home, I remember checking in with my cousin. I think it might have been on cell phone or something like that, or it must have been cell phone. And he still wasn't home. He was living in Arizona. He still lives in Arizona, but he had to get back to Phoenix or Tucson, and he still wasn't home. This was like 2 days later after we had supposedly left. Apparently he went to the Charles de Gaulle airport, and they couldn't get a seat for him. And it went through the day, and then it turned out there was just nothing available for him. So he got back on the train and went back to the hostel, and I think stayed another night or maybe a second night before he was able to get on a plane. And this was days later. I'm talking to him. He was still only in Denver at the point where he was going to have a transfer flight back to Arizona. But that was crazy, because you're like back home, you're back in your routine, and he still wasn't there. And I always thought about the fact of, boy, what a gut punch to be ready to go home. I think the trip was somewhere around, maybe it was 12 to 15 days or something like that. I can't remember, but it was long enough. It was a pretty long trip. And I just remember the feeling of getting to go home. And on that trip, actually, my dad had secretly upgraded me from coach to first class. And I just remember that trip being amazing. Just taking first class back home after being in hostels and all this. And I loved that experience. I really had a great time in these different hostels, getting to know different people. I remember I busted some guy's ass at some card game that he was a know-it-all on. I think he was British, and we were in Vienna at the time. Really cool hostel, where it was like beds were all different. It wasn't like bunk beds. It was just these nice, big, very tall ceilinged rooms, and almost like the ceilings were like 12 feet high or something. Really tall rooms. And there was some places were bunk beds. Some beds were like sideways into the wall. There was just all these things. But I remember beating this guy's ass at this card game, and he was telling me, "Oh, you're a first timer. I'll show you how it's played." And I don't know if it was dumb luck or whatever, or I had the strategy for it. I beat the guy like 4, 5, 6 times in a row, to the point where he was like getting really upset. But those are the kinds of things you get on trips like this. It's like the experience. You wouldn't have that if you didn't have a hostel. But I do remember getting back to this unshowered thing. My cousin and I were down in the main common area of this hostel in France, and I was talking to this guy. I think it was an Asian guy, maybe from California, and he had said that he was in Africa So this is the crazy point. When you're anywhere in Europe, you just think everyone's there almost for the same reasons, to be a tourist in that place. But maybe Paris just happened to be the transfer point where he's flying from, or going here, going there. You don't know where people are going, and that's kind of the neat part of it. But he had told me he was in Africa for 1 month, and there was two parts of this story that blew me away. He was staying in like a little African village, and it might have been some kind of Christian mission, something like that. But one, they ate hippopotamus burgers most of the time. What a crazy story. But, of all the things we eat, we think like, oh, cows, chickens, these are the normal things to eat. And then all around the world, people are eating crazy things. Like some Asian countries, I don't know if it's a stereotype or whatever, but they eat dogs. I mean, it's nuts. But he ate hippopotamus burgers. And then the other thing was that he didn't shower but a few times in a month. This literally would destroy me. I am so weak because I could not even do something like that. Like I couldn't go to Africa and be okay with the fact I'm unshowered. Maybe if it happened, it was 2-3 days in and my body, kind of acclimates to that and gets to a point where I can do this. Maybe it happens. I don't want to get there though. Showers are important to me. And so I'm angry right now. I'm a little on edge. We're many hours into the day. I'm going to have to grab a shower because I think we're going to go to a craft beer and food truck festival at the local minor league stadium here in Sussex County. We're going to be doing that in probably a half hour or so when my son wakes up. A lot of kid-friendly activities there, bouncy houses, all this stuff. So it should be a lot of fun, so I'll have to grab my shower there. But I'm especially angry right now because of the news that's coming out of France. We just talked about France, right, when I was on my trip in Paris. But France is going through an extremely important election right now. France has 2 rounds of elections where there can be 12 people in the first election, and then the 2 highest vote getters move on to the second round. And in the second round, the highest vote getter wins, right? So the big issue right now is we're on the heels of a lot of these different kind of movements that are happening around the world, where we're going from a kind of globalist, we're all in this together for the most part, or a global order that's maybe more American, Western centered on rules and regulations and human rights and multi-country plans and trade plans such as like the TPP or even the European Union and all these different things where we tried to come together and we tried to hold people to account by everyone being a part of something. It's all kind of breaking apart. I mean, we think about, first off, it's starting with Brexit, right? Where Britain really divorced itself from the connection it had with the European Union. It wasn't quite a full member because Britain didn't use the euro. And Britain was a very important place. It is a very important place because it's sort of the central seat of finance for a lot of the world. But having that connection with the European Union, being a part of that, gave it that cachet in a way. And so Britain broke off and they just, Article 50 or something? They pretty much just invoked the article that sets them on the official pathway to Brexit. So they're going to break off. That was a big thing. We're getting into this time where we're kind of not into the being together order, where I almost had this thought where government is kind of like vaccines, or a lot of these orders are like vaccines. When you're taking the vaccines and everyone's taking the vaccines, we're not seeing the counterfactual of diseases that have long been taken away by vaccines. We're not seeing what they're doing to a populace because they're gone. And that shared immunity that happens by us all taking vaccines and protecting each other through that, we just don't know what we're missing. So all of a sudden, many generations start taking vaccines and then they go, you know what, I'm not going to take vaccines. And they take for granted what those vaccines were providing, that insurance policy that it was providing. And so the minute you start doing that, you start taking for granted these systems in place, these global orders, because you go, you know what, I'm my own person. This isn't working for me, so I'm going to cut off. The minute you start cutting off, now that shared immunity is gone. So government and these global orders are kind of like a vaccine in that way. And so we're all kind of becoming anti-vaxxers. Well, not all of us, but enough important places in the world or people in the world are sort of having this idea, we're going to go it alone. Let's cut off. We don't believe that what the elite, what the smart people, quote unquote smart people, what the global orders are telling us. So we're going to break off almost as a form of our protest. And we're going to say, we don't need a vaccine. We don't need a global order. What's it doing for me? But then you start doing that. And then many years down the road, all of these long dormant bugs and all of these kind of these hidden diseases, they start coming back because the vaccines were stopping them. And when they start coming back, you now start threatening the people who are still taking the vaccines. And you don't know where it's all leading. Yes, a global order, elites, they do need to bring into the tent people who don't believe in those things. But I think we're running into a thing now where it's all breaking apart. You know, we start with Brexit. And then we moved on to Donald Trump somehow winning the presidency in America. And he kind of gets to this, I like the word ethno-nationalism. So we believe in our people. We don't believe in outsiders coming in. And we're our country first, but it's really coded language to say everybody else get out of here. You're not wanted. You're not needed here. But, you know, you're kind of saying that now. The first couple of people who don't take the vaccines, they go, I'm doing great. But you don't kind of know the insidious aspects of that until time gets put behind you enough. And then maybe the cat gets out of the bag, maybe the horse gets out of the barn, and you can't put it back in again. You can't fix that again. And then you go, whoops, what did we do? Kind of like climate change, all this stuff. Like, it's all insidious. It's all slow moving. We don't understand the wider movements, but there is movements happening. And so there was Donald Trump. And everyone says, well, you know, things happen in threes. And so first it was, I think, in the Dutch election, right? There was supposed to be the Geert Wilders guy, who is sort of the crazy-haired ethno-nationalist in I guess I think it's Denmark, right? And he did not win. So now we're kind of pushing that aside and saying, okay, it's not a movement. But now the big one here is France. You have Marine Le Pen in the final round here of the two people. You have Marine Le Pen, who is an extremely far-right ethno-nationalist. She is somebody who wants to take over France, become the leader of France, and ultimately turn inward on the country. Only worry about French interests. Only worry about things happening in France. Keep everybody else out. She even has brought up the fact that maybe she'll cut out of the European Union, a Frexit. And a Frexit almost sounds frightening, right? Because of the FR. Different than a Brexit. Brexit almost doesn't sound as bad. But if France cuts out, France and Germany are now the biggest parts of the euro. They're the European Union. They're the ones who are holding this thing together. They're the ones who have the two kind of yin and yang parts of the union and the big populations to boot. And they were kind of founding members here. Germany has more of the very proper aspects. They believe in saving and not overspending and kind of being sobering, right? That's kind of the word. France is we'll smoke cigarettes, we'll drink wine, maybe we won't go back to work, and there's some aspects that are necessary to that. They have the they have the 35-hour work weeks, right? So there's some things that are necessary to that. You need both sides. So if France decides to pull out of the European Union, all of a sudden this entire partnership comes undone, and we don't know what that means in any way. There's a lot of countries that are being tied together through this union. Some are being lifted up, raising all boats. Some are being kept from doing bad things. Many in the past have aspired to be a part of this union. The more start to break apart, the more people go, I don't know if I want to be in this. I mean, you look at Turkey. Turkey was somebody who had the carrot of becoming a European Union member for many years. And now they've kind of broken off. Their president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has kind of taken an authoritarian, autocratic turn. And that happened because there was a coup in the summer where they were going to try to take him out. And it was this coup that's run by this network, this kind of deep state, this hidden state that's run by a cleric named Fethullah Gulen, who actually only lives about 30 miles from here in northwest New Jersey. He lives kind of in the Poconos of Pennsylvania. Weird story. So all these kind of things are happening. But France is the big one here. So you have Marine Le Pen, the far-right Nationalist Front leader. She has this very dark, this movement is very dark, and it's, as I said, very ethno-nationalist. not the better angels of our nature, right? But she's kind of a pretty, kind of an attractive woman. So it puts some lipstick on the pig that is maybe this movement. They maybe tamp down some of the more intense impulses of it, some of the extra dark aspects of it, and they make it look a little bit more. They make it look a little nicer. It becomes a little more formidable over the years. Her father was an extreme ethno-nationalist, kind of a Holocaust denier type of guy, or if not even a denier, then a hey, who cares type of thing. So she brings a nicer elegance to it, but it still is what it is. And her winning really starts to undo this whole thing, doing to Europe what Donald Trump appears to be doing in America. And look, there are some aspects about being for your country, leading with your country, worrying about your country first that are important. But to upend the global order, to do so, is kind of like anti-vaxxers deciding not to be the ones who don't take vaccines, and they hurt all of us. We need a global order. We're too far down the road of connection and interconnectivity between all of these different countries and these balancing beams of Asia and the Middle East and America and Europe. There's so many ties in trade, in internet, in government, in learning about how governments can run, that we know too much at this point to put this all back. We can't close up shop. We can't build up walls and hide. It's too open. So I'm sorry, this is what happens. But Marine Le Pen is in what many people are saying, she's losing the race in polls by somewhere around 20 to 25%. So she doesn't have a very good chance to win, but she's there. And I've learned in this year not to believe in certainty, right? The Golden State Warriors, not that sports matters here. They're up 3-1 in the finals. They lose that thing. Who loses 3-1 in the finals when you have two of the final three games at home? They lost in the finals. You never know what happens. The Cleveland Indians lost from a 3-1 hole with the Cubs winning all the way back and then winning in an extra inning game where there was a rain delay after the ninth inning. I mean, crazy stuff happens. It's up and down the ledger, right on down to Donald Trump. Anytime there are finalists, anytime there's a competition, anytime external forces can be thrown into the mix, never believe in certainty. Don't just trust it's going to happen. And we're seeing that here now. Emmanuel Macron is the favorite. He's a 39-year-old kind of outsider, kind of a banker. He was in the government of Francois Hollande, the current president of France, who, by the way, has a 4% or less approval rating, hence why he's not running. Very weird to be an incumbent and actually not be running. So he's not even in play. But Emmanuel Macron, he began a party called En Marche only last year. He's married to a woman 25 years older than him, who was actually his teacher when he was in school as a teenager. He didn't end up marrying her then. He married her much later. He married her about 10 years ago when he was 29, and I think she was 54 or 44, 20. Doing my math here wrong. No, I think she was 54. So she's 64 now. He's 39. Hey, to each his own, whatever the case may be. But he's a fresh face kind of, but they're trying to pinpoint him down as this Rothschild banker, as a member of the financial elite deep state kind of thing. Because him winning means that the status quo and the global order is kind of maintained. He would try to improve on ties with the European Union. He would be outward looking, but looking out for France, but outward looking. So it's an important bulwark against what a lot of the world appears where a lot of the world appears it's going, right? It's an important piece because were Le Pen to win, I just can't take it anymore myself. And I think the world can't take it. We just got to hold the fort. We got to hold the water. We got to build the dam higher because things are happening that are just out of control. So Macron is in place, again, a 20 to 25 point favorite in the polls. Don't let that put you into a mode of complacency. So France, get out there and vote. But she kind of has a lot of the Trump aspects, Marine Le Pen, where a lot of the inside of the country, the rusted out their version of the Rust Belt, right? The places where there's not a downtown with any business left because a lot of the businesses that would drive these towns are gone, and a lot of it goes to globalism, right? So she has that kind of aspect. So it's an idea of kind of falling for the lie that somebody can bring back that stuff to your country. Look, globalism changed that. I'm sorry. That is something globalism does. Globalism and capitalism will always go towards the markets where it can get the best deal. And we're even finding now that China is not is not the back office of the world anymore. It's not the place where a lot of things are being developed. China's society is raising up in income. And so now we're moving to Bangladesh and we're moving to other places. I even read that some textile stuff is now moving to Africa. It's always going to find the cheapest place to get the work done. It's just how it works. That's the only way that you can keep margins down and try to continue to make money in a global order. It's just how it works. These things are not coming back. You need to create jobs on the new economy with the brain power we have in these countries, where our incomes have been brought up by globalism. You need to work atop that. There's not easy jobs anymore. There's not easy pickings. The only easy pickings are places where they're going to where they're actually lower than those jobs, and they're going to take them and be paid almost nothing to do it. I mean, it is what it is. But Macron is in this position where he is going to maintain some level of the order that has been maintained through much of the European Union. So after Brexit, it would be a very important statement for him to win for the European project. And today, actually Friday, because today's Saturday, on Friday, a hack came out. For Christ's sake, another hack. I've had enough of the hacks. Now, the hacks in America potentially upended the election in the favor of Donald Trump. You notice there weren't a lot of hacks coming on his side. They were coming after Hillary Clinton. They were coming on John Podesta. And look, these people fell for phishing attacks, or for Hillary Clinton, she had a server in her own home, whatever the case is. And that election was much closer, so a hack could change the calculus really quickly. The worry here is this hack, first off, apparently doesn't have earth-changing, game-changing documents in here where it's like we're out to screw. It's very mundane stuff, normal memorandum about campaigns, emails, all that stuff. But it's the very idea of being hacked that makes people doubt somebody. So this hack was enacted, and the documents were released 1 hour before a blackout occurs. So in French election politics, there is apparently a blackout period where for 48 hours before the polls, before people go to vote, there's no more campaigning. So the person, either side, can't go out and campaign. And there's some kind of media blackout to a degree where there's nothing more to write about it. So these hacks were dropped on the world and in France 1 hour before that blackout occurred. So now, if people are going to honor the blackout from the campaign and the media aspect, these leaks are going to lead the news cycle and potentially change the calculus of the voting public. And where they go with their vote, sort of like the Comey drop did to Clinton. So people in America might have felt, look, maybe Clinton's the lesser of two evils. I guess I'm going to vote for her. And that thing drops, and it's like, you know what? I'm sick of this. Hillary Clinton is just pissing me off. She's always got some skeleton in the closet. I thought I saw most of them, and this gets dropped. It only plays to our biases. And maybe, you know what? I'm voting for Trump, damn it. Or I'm staying home. I'm sick of this. None of these people are good. So, who knows which way that goes, but it can have that effect. And now the worry here is that the effect hits home, and then the hacking plays that up. And then the other worry is there's a lot of talk that potentially fake documents have been thrown in with the real documents. So maybe fake documents that are doctored to appear that Emmanuel Macron is doing things that would change voters' thoughts on him. And so it's just a very annoying thing that this gets thrown out there. And let's be honest, there's nothing on Marine Le Pen coming out in any hacks right now. But it's driving me nuts because whether it's Russia, whatever the case is, it's probably Russia. As much of the evidence shows, it was probably Russia in the American case. But there's people in America from the far right who are retweeting this information and trying to push it and really leverage it towards a win for Le Pen, because a win for Le Pen continues this narrative that the world is decoupling again, that we are all turning inward. And who wants everyone turning inward? Someone like Russia. Russia doesn't want a world order telling it what to do. It doesn't want rules and regulations that make it change who it is, that make it come to the table for strategic arms treaties, and makes it come to the table for democracy and human rights. It wants to focus. It wants to stay inward. It doesn't want people getting in its business. So why would it not want to? Why would it not want to propagate candidates in different places that make those countries look inward? It's not so much, I think, with Russia that it wants to make puppets in these places. I just think it wants people in place who just pay attention to their own stuff and stay and build their own walls and stay away from Russia. And it destabilizes democracy, as I saw the Macron campaign wrote. This is a destabilizing event for democracy. And the fact that it could turn things that change the world for years here, it just drives you nuts, because what do you do about it? If you're the Macron campaign, were you supposed to drive to the dark arts? Were you supposed to fight fire with fire by jumping into the mix and creating your own hack on the very case that someone might take documents that it hacked from you and drop it at the wrong time? I mean, if you're the Macron campaign, if you're people on the side of globalists, if you're on the campaign for liberal democracy or even liberal values, do you need to go dark on what you believe in? Do liberal Democrats, does the liberal world have to change its own modus operandi? Does it have to change how it interacts and acts in the world, which is coming from a place maybe of more goodness than darkness? Which, to say there's not something terrible about, I think a lot of these conservatives come from a place of darkness because they're trying to keep close to them what's important, and they feel that that's their way of doing it, that they're going to keep that most of the world is darkness, most of the world you can't trust. Let's keep sacred to us what's important. Let's keep our in-group. Let's be tribal with our group, which, everyone needs a little bit of that. We love our family. We love our friends. We don't want bad things to come upon them, but let's keep it in. Let's keep the world at bay. It creates kind of a dark psychology, whereas liberals are open. Their arms are open. They're trying to bring more people into the tent. They want goodness. And it just changes the order if that gets upended. And so if this drops and this changes the calculus, I don't know how a 20 to 25% favorite can flip an election with a leak like this. But you just don't know anymore. You don't know if Donald Trump can win, and we were so certain that Hillary was going to carry the most electoral college votes that we've seen in many years, and then it's just not the case. There's a lot of people hiding out with certain viewpoints who don't want to go public with them, I think. And so could this flip the script? Can this make them come out and vote for Le Pen? It's really scary. But reading that, I was really pissed. It pissed me off, because there's dark arts that are changing the world. For what? We're not looking inward. I'm sorry. It's not happening. Yesterday was May 5th, as we take a real turn here. Cinco de Mayo. Anybody who has heard this podcast knows my story. I love Mexican food. I could eat it several times a week. My wife and I love our Friday night Mexican food, whether we were living in Edgewater, New Jersey, and going to a place called Salsa, which was in a brick building of the former Domino sugar plant up on Route 5, going up the hill there in Edgewater. The place has since closed, unfortunately. It's become a sub shop, but it was some of the greatest Mexican we ever have. Clean, kind of Tex-Mex, health Mex. We would get the nachos with the chicken nachos as a starter, and we would each get burritos, BYOB, bring in our bottle of wine, polish that off. We were real close to home, go home on a Friday night. Oh, it's just fantastic. We love our Mexican. I even got, I proposed marriage to her in that Salsa, I think on a Wednesday night. Then we moved on to Chipotle eventually. I did Chipotle Roulette, the episode when Chipotle was going through its I think the E. coli scare, right? And I would go into the Chipotle to pick up our Friday night food. I'd order it on the app, and it was just a very affordable night. $18. You get your 2 burritos, you get your chips and salsa, head home, get your bottle of wine, call it a night. And we got through that scare, and we did great. But my wife told me, hey, there's a lot of people on the Sparta Moms group talking about this place in town, that the Mexican is great. And I thought to myself, I don't know, a place called, first of all, it's called Spartan Grill. It's just a terrible name. It almost feels like an after-school, high school spot where you go for some very mediocre food. But she's like, no, I think it's really good. And for me, I don't want to lose a great night of eating, right? So I don't want to order it and then it's just terrible. But we did it one night. We just went for it, and we got it. And it was some of the best Mexican food I've had in years. It was a very real Mexican. It was a pulled chicken. It was tightly packed burritos that were perfectly cut and like nothing could break them apart, like almost sushi burritos. It was so good. The chips are very authentic. They're not a lot of salt. There's some flour on them. It's fantastic. And so we moved in that direction and we haven't looked back since. Sorry, Chipotle. We've completely moved on. Now, if we get Chipotle on a certain night, we won't even, we'll be like, oh, that's so salty. It blows you away. So this place has completely gone in the direction for us of being just the greatest spot. I think it's an actual maybe first generation Mexican family. I think it's a husband and wife who do all the cooking, and their kids are always all walking around. I think one of the kids last night was doing the orders and taking the money at the register. And they also use Square, which I think is really cool. They'll do deliveries. Sometimes the husband delivers it. Sometimes I think they use Uber to deliver it. I don't know if that's even allowed, but I love the innovation. I love everything about this place. So it's become our Friday night, and I almost want to like buy shares in it so that we can, keep it around. Because last night when I went in there was a whole lot of people there. There never really are a lot of people when I go in, and they were just like, oh, it's Cinco de Mayo. We wanted to get a place. We heard this place was good. And so I'm like a proselytizer. I'm just like, yeah, this is the best. It's amazing. And you just love to find your place, right? You love the place that takes you home at the end of the day. On a Friday, you yearn for that. You yearn for that burrito. You yearn for that wine. You yearn for that chips. You yearn for that freedom of a Friday night. It's just, it's amazing. And it's funny, like we were thinking last night, oh, why don't we get margaritas? And I don't know, I'm a stickler. I don't like to change things up. I'm a beer and wine guy, and I think with certain foods, I love wine, and my wife and I will share a bottle of wine, and it really does well. And she was like, margaritas, and I was like, oh, I don't know, because how do we make it? Where do I got to stop and get it? I'm tired, and then you start looking at, there's these margarita mixes where you could get the mix and then you put in like tequila with it, you put some ice and everything's good. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, there was like 34 grams of sugar or something in a 4 ounce. And so I'm such like an individual, weird, eccentric guy that like, I don't want the sugar in the margarita to change how much of the Mexican food I normally eat. And I don't want anything to mess my Friday night, my perfect, idealistic Friday night. Because there was a time a couple of weeks ago when we got the Mexican, Melanie had heard of this drink. So there's this drink called Not Your Father's Root Beer. It's actually amazing. It tastes exactly like root beer, but it's alcohol. It's got like 6%. And they have Not Your Father's Ginger Ale, and I think they have Not Your Father's Cherry Cola. So they're building out that franchise. But this root beer is so good. And somebody had told her that if you get the Not Your Father's Root Beer and then you get something called rum chata, which is sort of like a creamy liqueur, that you put the two together and it creates like a root beer float. And so this is like kind of influencing my non-desire for the margarita. We got these, and after having one, I was like literally bloated as if I had a root beer float, and then I'm like not that tipsy. So I go for the second one, and it just ruined my entire feng shui with that. But I'll tell you, it's a fantastic drink if you like root beer floats. It's very interesting. I love the innovation of these people who think of these things. Well, you know what? I got a bunch of things to talk about more, but I think I got to head to this beer and food truck festival, and I got to grab a shower because I don't know what will happen if I go another half hour. It's pretty disgusting. So, friends, this was fun as usual. We're back on the saddle. Again, I have a lot more things to talk about, but sometimes duty calls, and it's waking time for little 2.5-year-old Liam. I hear him yelling for me. I see my wife trying to call me on my phone. So, friends, until next time, over and out. Here's one for democracy, liberal democracy. Vote Macron. Please. Please. We can't have Marine Le Pen. Please. Watch the John Oliver piece on her. Watch the 60 Minutes interview with her. Read anything you can on her. This is not the order we want. We've already done this, America. We're going to have to pick up the pieces as we go forward. As it is, we're going to have to see what we can do in midterm elections and in the next election, which I don't want to count 4 years of my life, but please, I need this to stop. And this episode will stop now. Thanks again.